Welcome, Dr. Epic here, and what we're going to discuss in this section is hunting bison, hunting deer, excellent arrowheads, the Commanche, and finally, Texicans themselves. We're going to complete our discussion of cultural ecology and the Karankawa. We're going to follow that outline right up above my head as we proceed to finish our discussion of this question. What is human ecology? What is a seasonal round? Given the current archaeological evidence, what is the human ecology of the Karankawa? How did it shift over time, and why did it shift over time? And at the end of this lecture, you have all the material you need to answer that question and support your answers to that question with specific archaeological evidence. Now, we've already discussed the Group 1 sites. The Group 1 sites contain Rockport ceramics. That's how we know they're Karankawa sites. But the Group 1 sites are very large. They represent a lot of people, and they are always located next to the coast. The Group 2 sites are quite different. The Group 2 sites are much more ephemeral. So we're going to deal with basically groups of sites here. We don't really have one representative site like we had with Kirchmeier. The important thing to remember about these Group 2 sites is that the sites are all set inland, they are all quite small, and they are located along rivers, by riverbanks, above areas that look pretty much like that. These Group 2 sites are all quite similar. They're all very small. They can't represent more than a single family group or maybe a dozen people at most, staying here for, at most a single season. They consist basically of these lenses of activity placed on small bluffs or small rises overlooking these Texas rivers, in the woods that surround these Texas rivers, next to those huge open grasslands that we discussed earlier. Most of these are single phase activities, which is to say these are campsites. A small group of Karankawa will come, occupy a bluff overlooking a river, and again, we're not talking probably not more than a dozen people, but they might never return to this one spot after they finish using it over a single season. And here's what the maps of some of these sites look like. And I want to point out that even though you have multiple sites on these maps, that does not mean that the camps were used at the same time. Like in the map right up above me, you've got 2 different sites, but you've got 4 different sites. But between each of those sites, there could be 100 years. If you look at that map in the upper left, you'll see that there's 4 different sites there. That doesn't mean that you've got like 4 families using that same bluff over the same season. What it means is you've got 4 different sites. It could be the same family reusing the same bluff over 4 years, or over the course of 40 years, or over the course of 400 years. So years and years and years and decades and centuries might separate each of those small sites. So even though you have a map with multiple campsites along the top of this riverbank, that doesn't mean they're all being used contemporaneously. What it means is that they're favoring the same site over extended periods of time. And again, all of these sites are, 1, they're all quite small. 2, they overlook the rivers. And 3, the thing you need to remember is that they are successive. They are not contemporaneous. It's not multiple family units using the same bluff simultaneously. Now, one of the more unusual thing that's associated with these Group 2 sites is stunningly beautiful arrowheads. Stunningly beautiful spear points. Those are probably dart points for atlatls. Those are spear throwers. Absolutely stunningly beautiful arrowheads. I mean, look at those arrowheads right up above me. Made from high quality Central Texas chert, intricately flaked. Great deal of time and skill spent making these big, beautiful arrow points. You look over there, those big spear points for probably, spears or javelins that would be thrown against big game. Beautifully flaked chert. High quality Central Texas chert from probably somewhere around the Austin region. Big, beautiful points. This is prime hunting technology. If you want to go hunting deer, if you want to go hunting bison, this is what you would do it with. And this raises a really odd point. Are these the same people that when they were on the coast were making those terrible, crappy little arrowheads out of oyster shell and alligator gar scales? And the answer is yes. These are the exact same people. It's the same people that made these beautiful arrowheads at the Group 2 sites are making incredibly crappy arrowheads at the Group 1 site. Cogitate on that. Why are they not spending a lot of time or talent or energy making arrowheads at the Group 1 sites? And we know it's the same people because Rockport ceramics. Rockport ceramics, here we are. These beautiful Rockport ceramics, coil and paddle vessels decorated with asphaltum from coastal Texas, and a lot of them too. And again, there's so much Rockport ceramics are found at these Group 2 sites. We absolutely know these are Karankawa people. These are Karankawa people camping out at these Group 2 sites. It's got to be. It's got to be. So what are they doing at these Group 2 sites? Well, they are doing a lot of hunting. They are doing a lot of butchering. The most evident eco-facts from these little small Group 2 sites are butchered deer and butchered bison. Faunal analysis has generally shown that they in fact have a preference for a certain type of bison. Generally what they're hunting are the older bison, the older bulls and the older cows from the bison herds. They generally go for the older animals. And secondarily, they're going for the very, very young animals, the calves. So while they're at these Group 2 sites, they're hunting bison. They're not hunting the bison in the prime of their life. They're not hunting the big, powerful adult bison. They're hunting the very old and the very young. They're hunting a lot of deer too, but there doesn't seem to be any preference for deer. They hunt any kind of deer. They hunt old deer, they hunt young deer, they hunt adult deer, they hunt male deer, they hunt female deer. So pretty much they're hunting any kind of deer they find. But when they go for bison, they're going for older bulls, older cows, and younger calves, male and female. Here is a couple of these sites. These are these incredibly sexy site names. 41 NU 221 and 41 SP 167. Now you've read the Nancy White book, so you know what those codes actually mean. And here are minimum number of individuals. These are the animals that were recovered. So at that one site, 41 NU 221, what did they hunt there? They hunted at least one adult older female bison, one white-tailed deer, and shellfish, sea trout, and catfish. So there is a direct connection, again, to the Texas coast. It's not just Rockport ceramics. So they are bringing some of this shellfish in from the coast. And that might not seem like much, but that's all they recovered. And some of the excavations at these sites, as you can see, it's only a handful of units. If you look up in the upper left, I mean, that's only like 4 units. It's only like 4 1x1s is what it looks like. But at any rate, that's the very minimum of what they're butchering there. And at 41 SP 167, they've got 4 bison that have butchered there. 2 males, 1 female, and 1 juvenile male. And this is in addition to white-tailed deer and a ton of rangia shell. So these people are, somehow figuring out some way to preserve this rangia. They're probably soaking it in brine. And a little black drumfish. So they're bringing drumfish in from the coast, probably to sustain them while they're getting their hunting camps up and running. So they're hunting deer, they're hunting bison, they're bringing in food from the coast. Now, the seasonal round should be becoming very clear to you. You should say, okay, the Group 1 sites represent X number of people. They represent this time of the year. They represent these type of activities. The Group 2 sites are these group of people, this time of the year, and are representing these range of activities. And if you combine those Group 1 and Group 2 together with what we've already learned about the environment of the Texas coast, it should be apparent how they're operating their seasonal round. And if you're sitting there and you're making a funny, confused expression, pause and go listen to the last 3 lectures again, because we're gonna start changing that seasonal round. And I'm gonna point out what happened to that seasonal round and how this very sustainable relationship with the Texas environment collapsed. And that pattern, that seasonal round, which is very closely associated with Rockport ceramics, it holds from at least AD 1300 all the way to the mid 18th century, all the way until about 1740, 1750. Although I do want to point out the 1300 that's just when Rockport ceramics show up. But the Karankawa, and certainly the ancestors of the Karankawa, the seasonal round pattern probably goes all the way back to 1, 2, or maybe even 3000 BC. It's just that the Rockport ceramics is when we've got conclusive archaeological evidence that these are the Karankawa people. But in the 18th century, the pattern shifts, okay? The pattern begins to shift really dramatically. And after about 1750 or so, almost all of those Group 2 sites vanish. And especially the Group 2 sites that are really far inland in Texas, those are completely abandoned. It is almost as if something comes along to bar the Karankawa from those coastal plains, from those bison herds. And that what comes along to bar them, to make Central Texas much, much too dangerous for the Karankawa, are probably the Commanche. The Commanche come and they establish an area called the Comancheria, a vast, powerful, mobile Native American empire based on hunting buffalo, based on riding horses. And they build the Comancheria, that's it in red. And then they launch powerful attacks upon all their neighbors around the area. And it is the Comanche who then take over the wealthiest, the most powerful, and the richest hunting grounds in North America, and then use those hunting grounds to launch attacks on all of their neighbors. So who exactly are the Comanche? The Comanche were originally like a group of hunter-gatherers in what is today like Wyoming, not far from where the Shoshone were. But beginning around 1700, the Comanche capture these wild horses, these Mustangs that were accidentally introduced by the Spanish when the Spanish conquered Mexico down in the 1500s. And the Comanche become some of the greatest horsemen the world has ever seen. They sweep across the Great Plains in this swath of destruction, either defeating, enslaving, annihilating, or expelling every other Native American group in their paths. They basically push the Apache out of northern Texas and into Arizona. There's a group of Native Americans called the Tonkawa, and these guys are pushed out of central Texas right into eastern Texas. And the appearance of the Comanche must have absolutely shaken and disturbed the Karankawa seasonal round. So suddenly they are cut off from the bison hunting grounds of central coastal Texas, from that coastal plain. And by the 1840s, the Comanche have established this Native American empire, the Comancheria. And this is a Native American empire that's formally acknowledged by the Spain. They actually send ambassadors to the Comancheria and stuff. The Comanche, the appearance of the Comanche must have badly disrupted the seasonal round. Suddenly, they are cut off from hunting bison. And archaeologically, again, almost all of those Group 2 sites vanish. No more camping by a river. No more hunting bison. No more hunting deer in the scattered riverine woodlands of coastal Texas. And something very interesting happens because the Karankawa find a replacement for bison. They replace bison with something else. Because it is at this exact same time that the Karankawa send emissaries south. They send emissaries into Mexico. Because for 100 years up until now, the Catholic Church had been trying to convert the Karankawa into Catholicism, and the Karankawa just told them straight up no. But suddenly, in the 18th century, just as the Comanche appear in central Texas, the Karankawa get very religious. They send emissaries south asking to be converted to Catholicism. And the Catholic Church responds by sending friars north, by sending monks north, and building a series of missions along the Texas coast. And you can see the very first Texas missions right up above me. Presidio La Bahia, Espiritu Santo, Refugio, Rosario. All of these Spanish missions appear, and the Karankawa embrace Catholicism. Now, they do so while taking a substantial demographic blow. If you look at this proposed reconstruction of the demographic history of the Karankawa, you can literally see that first huge dip. That is the appearance of the Comanche. As they drop from what is probably a population around 8,000 Karankawa to a population of little more than 2,000 or 3,000 who convert to Catholicism. And the Catholic fathers heap immense praise on the Karankawa. They learn the catechism. They attend mass. They are eager to participate in the activities of the Spanish missions. They eagerly help the Spanish father. They really like riding horses. But what they're really interested in, and the Spanish fathers are very surprised by this, the Karankawa are really interested in the cattle that the Spanish fathers bring with them. They are interested in a lot of the cattle. They are intricately invested in cattle. They want to learn everything about cattle. They want to learn how to herd cattle. They want to learn how to raise cattle. They want to know what to do with cattle. They want to know how you raise a huge herd of cattle. The Karankawa become the first Texas cowboys, taught by the Spanish vaqueros, bringing all of these cattle up from Mexico. And here we have the archaeological ruins of the second Mission Espiritu Santo. It was a mission that existed between 1729 and 1748. And these missions rapidly acquire massive herds of cattle. By 1750, there's something like 40,000 head of cattle along coastal Texas. And basically, the Karankawa, with the Spanish mission, establish and prove the viability of large-scale ranching in South Texas. In a South Texas where hunting bison becomes very, very dangerous. And so, yeah, the Karankawa establish ranching in Texas. But the problem is that the Spanish fathers get very, very upset at the Karankawa. And one of the big problems with the missions, and this is going to totally baffle the Spanish priests, but it should make total sense to you, knowing what you know in your brain. The Spanish fathers bitterly complain that the Indians will only help them with the cattle during the summer. And that suddenly winter will come and all this mission, which was full of Karankawa during the spring and summer and into the autumn, suddenly all of the Karankawa will just pack everything up and leave. And the Spanish priests and the Spanish fathers got very, very upset that the Karankawa are apparently only willing to help out with the mission cattle during the spring or the summer. Come winter, the mission fathers bitterly complain that all of their Karankawa vaqueros would vanish. Why do you think they're vanishing? Where do you think they're going? And why have they become interested in these cattle? What are they using the cattle to replace? But are they substantially changing their seasonal round? And I want you to think about this, and you should have an answer to this. What was the old Karankawa seasonal round? And now, what is the 18th century seasonal round? However, things are not good for the Karankawa. They do, and you can see in the chart up above, for most of the 18th and into the early 19th century, the Karankawa do reach an equilibrium, but their numbers simply do not grow. And then, starting in the 1820s and into the 1830s, the Karankawa are decimated a second time, not by the Commanche of Central Texas, but by the Texican colonists of East Texas. The Texicans, Stephen Austin, Jim Bowie, Sam Houston, all of these guys that found Texas start moving into East Texas. And what they're bringing with them are new approaches, new farming methods, an entirely new approach to agriculture. And they're what they're aggressively pushing the Indians to the south, and they're pushing the Indians to the west. One of the really devastating things that the Texicans are bringing with them is cholera. And the Karankawa are hit by these epidemic waves of cholera that just absolutely collapse their numbers. And you kind of feel bad for the poor Karankawa, because they were often caught in the middle of these military clashes between the Texicans on one side and the Commanche on the other. The Commanche would come down from central Texas and boom, hit a series of Texican farms, kill the men, grab the women and children, and then head back off to the Llano Estacado. And the Texicans would gather together a well-armed posse and go after the Indians. But the problem is that the Texicans couldn't tell the difference between different groups of Native Americans. And they would be attacked by the Commanche, and in retaliation, attack the Karankawa. And the Karankawa didn't really do anything. But suddenly they're getting blamed. They're getting attacked for things that they didn't even do. You should feel quite badly for them, because they're the first Texas cowboys. Things have gotten so bad, but that basically by the 1840s, the Karankawa are virtually afraid to leave the Spanish missions. They're afraid of getting attacked by the Commanche. They're afraid of getting attacked by the Texicans. They're afraid of dying of cholera. And by 1840, with the remaining numbers of Karankawa, which is only a few hundred at this point, formally petition Holy Mother Church. They formally petition the Roman Catholic Church to be relocated. They ask to be rescued from this new land of Texas that they don't understand and they can't survive. The Catholic Church agrees, because the Catholic Church knows these guys are really good with cattle and they're really good cowboys, and it wants them working on more profitable missions in what is now northern Mexico. So the remaining Karankawa in the 1840s are moved from coastal Texas and relocated in northern and central Mexico, where they blend in with the people who are already there. Small bands continue to hang on, sort of clinging to the Texas coast. But for the most part, by 1860, the Karankawa have ceased to exist on the Texas coast. This indigenous art form, this 500-year-old ceramic tradition, Texas clay and asphaltum from the Gulf of Mexico, it ends. Rockport ceramics, an indigenous Texas art form, ceases to exist. Now you have all of the evidence you need to answer that question. You should have in your mind a model of the original Karankawa seasonal round, how it changed in the 18th century, and how it finally failed in the end. You should be able to produce a detailed argument that answers this question. What is human ecology? What is a seasonal round? Given the current archaeological evidence, what is the human ecology of the Karankawa? How did it shift over time, and why did it shift over time? And again, use specific archaeological data from this lecture to answer your question. And now you've learned all about the Karankawa. And now we're going to take many of these same concepts of cultural ecology and human ecology and apply it to a much more complex, much larger scale society, the classic Maya. And that's what we'll discuss in our next lecture, and I will see you there.